Hello. Good morning. Well, in on the West Coast, it's good morning. Here in the DMV, it's midday at 12:30. Thank you so much for joining today's webinar. It's our Giving Tuesday webinar, Beyond Access. As we wait for everyone else to join the call, I just want to invite you to comment where you're joining us from today. And you can drop your city, your state, your location. This is our first actual fully live conversation webinar from Schools for Salone. We usually do these closed user group ones, but this time we're doing it live because it's such an important conversation to have with the rest of the public. So this is a transnational conversation. Some of you are going to be joining from Seattle. Some of you will be joining from here in the DMV. I know lots of you will be watching from Sierra Leone. So una welcome, una kalbo kushe. Welcome to Kristen and Ken and Suzanne, Joanna, Brenda, Richard, Jennifer, Deborah, and of course, Cindy. It's such a great, it's a great day here in the DMV. As you can see, like I have all this like sun hitting me. Today's webinar is brought to you by Schools for Salone because we think that it's a really important time to have a conversation about building a brighter future with quality education in Sierra Leone. As Sierra Leone looks to turn the page towards a brighter future in education, we're calling on you to join this conversation on the role of foundational learning in quality education. With over 2 decades as education champions, Schools for Salone has built 45 schools across Sierra Leone, trained hundreds of teachers, and educated thousands of students from the north, the west, and the south of Sierra Leone. What started as an emergency response to rebuild schools in the immediate post-war period in Sierra Leone is now a far-reaching movement in partnership with local organizations. And our movement is supported by former Peace Corps volunteers and powered by American generosity. Today, this Giving Tuesday, we're happy to welcome you to discuss education trends in Sierra Leone and highlight ways to move beyond just access towards holistic quality education. My name is Vickie Remoe, and many of you might know me on the internet as your favorite Sierra Leonean online, or you might have seen my TV show, The Vickie Remoe Show, or listen to the podcast, etc., etc. If you can hear me, I hope you can hear me. Everybody can hear me okay? I think so. So yes, thank you so much for joining us. This webinar, I keep calling it a call, but this webinar is going to last about an hour, and we are going to be talking to education leaders in Sierra Leone and beyond. But first up, I am truly excited to welcome one of my favorite, and now my new favorite, because we just met today. I'm going to be welcoming Bidemi, Carrol, and the Minister of Education, Dr. Conrad Sackey, on this call. I'm going to be talking to our great founder, Cindy Nogziger, who, if not for her answering the call to start building one school in Sierra Leone, it really started for friendship. We wouldn't be here today. So I'm going to welcome Cindy, who's going to take us through her story. Like, she's one of my favorite people ever. And I'm not just saying that because you're here, Cindy. You know I love you. You really are. Oh, Cindy, you know, a lot of people don't know your story. I mean, I know because I hear it all the time, and but for people who are joining us for the first time across the world, how did you end up in Sierra Leone? I'm not going to say the year. I'll leave it to you. How did you end up in Sierra Leone, and how did your journey take you to where we are now?
Oh, thank you so much, Vickie, for this warm introduction. And thank you, everyone, for joining us here today. What an honor it is to have you here with us and to learn more about education in Sierra Leone. And my journey with Sierra Leone began in the mid 1980s as a Peace Corps volunteer. And I was assigned to go work at Masanga Leprosy Hospital, which is in Tonkalili District, pretty much right in the middle of the country, and had two of the most probably influential years of my life there, and formed deep friendships with Sierra Leoneans as well as Peace Corps volunteers. So, fast forward through the horrible war, and um, when schools or Friends of Sierra Leone decided to hold their annual meeting in Freetown in 2004, I decided to go along. And during that trip, I was able to actually visit Masanga, but most importantly, find and reconnect with Sierra Leonean friends of mine who I had been the closest with at Masanga. So one of them, John Sase, who had worked with me every day in the physical therapy department at Masanga, became or asked me if I would help him rebuild the school in his village that had been destroyed during the war. And being a physical therapist, I knew nothing about raising money or building schools, but I told him I would try. And he gave me drawings done by the children in his village. And with the help of Ken Lance, who's here on this call today, we turned those drawings into note cards, and we sold them to everybody and anybody that would buy them. And that was back when people actually did handwritten notes. So we raised the money for that first school, and I went back in 2005 to open this school, and just outside of Mabunto in a small village called Maforica. And of course, when you go to Sierra Leone, you don't just show up and go visit one thing, but they always want to show you different things as well. So we visited several other villages, and the next year we went back and we opened up three more schools, and it just kept going. And um, we've had just amazing people kind of come into our lives at the right time that have made these schools possible. And we have been partnering now with well, we partnered with John Sase, but also then with my dear friend Joseph Williams Lamine, who also had experience in construction, and so he was our main point person for building all of these schools initially. Um, and with Joseph's help and guidance, we moved into making sure that the schools had learning materials every year for the school, um, for the school year, as well as sponsorships for students. However, as we continued to move along, by the time Ebola came and we came back after Ebola, we found that many girls had to drop out of school and couldn't come back. And so we started exploring how could we support girls more fully to help them stay in school. And out of that was born one of our amazing partners called Women Talk that makes reusable, sustainable menstruation kits. And we give these to all the girls in all of our schools that have reached puberty. So, and then obviously the other gap that we started to see was that the teachers needed more support and more training. And so we started partnering with Bidemi Carrol and the Learning Foundation. And you're going to hear a lot more about their work today. And they've just become instrumental in really helping to give teachers in the classroom, really classroom skills that they need to teach the phonics and letter sounds and how to put words together so that teachers can really teach the students how to read. We also support and work with the Ministry of Education in working to sponsor teachers to support or to attend the distance learning program that's sponsored by the Ministry of Education and the distance learning in the different teacher training colleges. So, and we work hard to make sure that all of our schools, I think we have one or two that still need to be approved by the ministry, but we try to work in tandem with the ministry and to complement their efforts as we move forward to support quality education in our schools.
Right. No, I think, for some people who've seen me post about Schools for Salone, it's hard for people to understand the way that we work, right? Because it's like they see us, but it's hard to sometimes capture this big ecosystem that we've created locally through partners. For example, one of the things that we do differently is that Schools for Salone doesn't send, a big team of expatriates to Sierra Leone to implement programming. That can be really costly and a lot of time also just ineffective. One of the things that I think makes the work that the organization does really unique is this partnership with local organizations like the Learning Foundation, like the Sierra Leone Book Trust, Woman Talk, of course, my favorite. Shout out to Julie. and and of course, Clinton in the North and Program for Children. That at the end of the day, it's one thing to provide the resources, but making sure that the work is being delivered by local people who understand the landscape, who understand the community, who understand the issues, I think is the reason why Schools for Salone has been around for so long. Because you know that during the post-war period, there are so many new NGOs, right? Like there are lots of NGOs responding to this emergency, but many have found it very difficult to transition out of that because that model of sending people back to Sierra Leone is very costly. It's not sustainable. But building this like radically collaborative partnership to really safeguard education, not just in cities, but at the last mile is why I'm here. It's why I'm a fan, Cindy, because I'm always like, this is exactly how it should be done. You can't just like send people to Africa to go save it. You can't do that. You have to work with local people. So thank you so much for sharing that story. I know that we lost John. Was it earlier this year that we lost John?
Last year.
Last year.
Last year.
Yeah, it's been yeah. I feel like the fact that this organization started from friendship is still at the heart of how we operate and what we do. So thank you so much, Cindy, for sharing your story. Since you've talked about it, now the best thing to do is to show people so that they can see. I also know that you hate publicity. You're like, please, Vickie, no. So thank you so much. I'm going to invite you guys to sit back and relax and watch a short film produced by my team in Sierra Leone that really gets to the heart of what we do at Schools for Salone and the kind of impact that we're making and that we've made over the last 19 years.
We started this school 2006, and then from there to now, we don't suffer. We don't suffer because we didn't have the building where we say an agriculture building, so we not being get school. Based on that, but no matter what they try, because of all the picking the way then they sit, we get 100%. And this center, Musaya, na the center. We get about 6 schools the way then they can sit under this MOF, so they can force. And even this year again, we first man caught 302 and the second man now 300. So we're glad for that. And also again, we're glad for school for Salone because then they can give this building. So I tell them plenty thank you for the effort we then don't play for we.
Building schools here in Sierra Leone has been our priority since 2005 when we opened up our first school. And since that date, we've completed 45 schools scattered around the country in the far north, in Falaba and Koinadugu districts, with Clinton Cocker, our program coordinator in the far north, and with Program for Children in the far south, in Bo District and Tonkalili and Western area. So we are pleased. We're just able to visit some of the schools up in the north, including Medina, where we held the opening ceremony, and also at Musaya, where we held the groundbreaking for a new school that will be taking place there in Musaya. So again, to date, that will be our 46th school. And then yesterday, the team was able to visit a new construction site in the community of Pentagon, which is in the outskirts of Freetown.
Before ever would they select the communities where they go, they come unannounced after the request. They come unannounced. I can see if they need they, see who side the picking and they, if they correct, if they need school or they don't need school. So if they need the school, they see how the school turn outside and they sit down for school. If it did they, if it not they, then I go back. Then as I go back, maybe I do the second visit. I can see now for know how many picking they get, and see the if the town or they come or like how they Musaya. So we see the commitment with the people they're ready for do, the young community participation and everything they get for do. If you okay with me, then I put them together. Then I approach Schools for Salone USA now. Would they make sure say the teachers they were not trained and qualified? Would they send them go for distance learning in HTC, TC, and BED? So would they send them for that? Then they do that course there for three years, with an agreement between we, the teachers, the school, and we School for Salone, right? Then they sign a contract that after we don't train them down for the 3 years, the commitment they for they by the school for another 2 years before they go even make up their mind for change, for go other side for go continue their career.
One of the things I do is build schools in various developing countries. I do it because I feel it's important and it's a place where I can make a difference. I feel that I'm quite successful in my business, and what I'd like to do is build 30 schools eventually. I was introduced to schools to Salone, and I found out that they met all my criteria for building schools and managing schools and making sure the schools are successful and the students got the education that they needed. Education is a gift that can never be taken away. In giving kids an education now, they'll have it for the rest of their life and they can use it. My goal is to come back in 3 years and see a lot of happy children going into and out of the classroom, getting a quality education.
Some of the facilities where Schools for Salone they give, where other schools they not get, they start with first who finish the school, where they put full furniture inside, power the schools with solar lights. We get curriculum materials where they give them. That is curriculum textbooks, where for teach the picking and find so they're not going to forget textbooks. We give them school supply like exercise books, pens, pencils, eraser, and some chalk for the teachers them so they say don't not go strain. So that's not the unique part of the program where Schools for Salone, we make Schools for Salone the top today in all the area of operation of Falaba and Calabar district.
I mean, this School for Salone, it don't help we in this community, especially the side where it don't complete now. We see yesterday the kind anxiety where the picking them get. And also the coordinator tell me about, you know, the good results where them pull this year. That not because of the good building. The building we've been there before, one part don't dilapidate. I mean, where you should done inside itself, you dey worry for your picking, even the picking inside the class, you not go feel happy, you go feel say, you know, the world go for dump on them. But now, the picking they sit down inside classroom, comfortable one, take their lessons, then listen to them, teach them, then they collect on the building. I think say that don't help for improve even the results. The results we then pull here as compared to the past year is far better than the past years. So we tell God thank you for that. We tell School for Salone plenty thank you. And I want with this method, I want to make them reach out, you know, other chiefdoms, other sections, na my own chiefdom, and also maybe go now other chiefdom if possible. And I want to tell the donors them plenty thank you, make them really see say we need this one, and I believe say even Annette, the meeting will hold themselves, they're really happy, and then happy for giving more support, for giving Sierra Leone more support.
In the next few years, we will continue to build schools as we have the resources available, because that list is endless. We are always getting more requests for more schools that need to be built in these remote end-of-road communities. However, one of our big priorities is to make sure that the schools we have constructed are thriving and that they get the repairs that they need, that the water wells are repaired, that the latrines are kept up to date and clean and hygienic. We want to make sure that girls have the dignity kits so that they can go to school every day, and the reproductive health education that helps to keep teenage pregnancies at a minimum. In addition, we want to make sure that all schools have the learning materials and that students have the pens and pencils and exercise books, and teachers have the training and the resources that they need to be able to give quality education. We thank you for your support to have helped make all this possible here in Sierra Leone through our dedicated partners in the school communities. And we urge you to continue your generous support, because it's more critical now than ever before to continue to make sure that our schools have what they need to thrive, and we cannot do it without you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. One of the things that continues to keep me inspired about Schools for Salone is how far the organization is willing to go. A lot of these communities are what you would call last mile communities that are at the end of the road. And even as the government tries to, provide education across the country, we all know that there's just not enough resources. And that's why this work is so important. Next, I'd like to welcome Bidemi Carrol, who sits on the board of Schools for Salone, but also is an education policy expert with years of experience in the call. And I will also like to welcome the Minister of Basic and Senior Secondary Education. It is a mouthful. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Sackey.
Thanks, Vickie.
Thank you.
Thank you. So before we move any further, Dr. Sackey, you're a very, very busy man. I wasn't sure you were going to join us here today. So I just want to say thank you so much for making the time, because as a small organization, sometimes we not so them big, alejo there. So not so, I don't want to talk more, but sometimes when you're a small NGO, you don't know if government is see you now. So it just really warms our heart that you're here today. You see us, you know us. So thank you so much for joining us.
I'm delighted to be here. I'm grateful for the invite, and I'm looking forward to visiting one of your schools.
Very soon, very, very, very soon. Okay, so let's just kick it off right away. I know you've been at the Ministry of Education for about, I think, a little over a year now, or about a year. One of the things that I think people sometimes miss is how far Sierra Leone has come in the last 2 decades, meaning in the post-war era. Could you just give us a snapshot of, at the end of the war, take us back, what did we have by way of education infrastructure in Sierra Leone? Where were the teachers? What did, when the war ended, I think it was in 2001, and, Lome Peace Accord, what did we have? What did we inherit?
Well, first of all, let me just make a correction. I am not Dr. Sackey. I am Mr. Sackey.
Sorry, sir. You know how the situation now at the country. So,
well, that's why I want to make sure that
that's why I want to clarify. Thank you.
Well, of course, after the war, we had our infrastructure was severely destroyed, and so we had very few infrastructure in place. In addition to that, some of the teachers were killed, and those who escaped went to other countries. So we do have a significant number of our teachers in the Gambia. For some strange reason, they are still there. I keep on reminding Gambian counterparts that I would get a plane and get all my teachers back now and again. But also, I think let's look at the educational landscape. We did not have a curriculum in Sierra Leone after the war. We made use of the West African Examination Council's syllabus to teach our kids, which means that the focus of the education was not aligned with our national priorities. We also had a moratorium for a very long time for recruiting teachers. And so we had very few teachers around. Immediately after the war, we recruited some teachers, but these were untrained and unqualified teachers because these were the people who were willing to go to these very high risk areas. And so if you look at that landscape, we were starting from ground zero. It was therefore one of the reasons why when this government came into power, they decided to introduce the Free Quality School Education Initiative. Now, the Free Quality School Education Initiative, I tend to see as a poor policy. Because one of the barriers to accessing the educational system was the huge amounts of monies that households had to pay to access education. And what the Free Quality School Education Initiative offered was the fact that there was free tuition, there was free exam fees, they had free teaching and learning materials, we had free school meals, we had free sanitation for the girl child, and many other things. So you could see that with that, parents were relieved of the financial burdens that would have prevented them from sending their kids to school. As a result of this poor policy, we have seen 1 million young people access the system. I must also say that Sierra Leone has also suffered from a number of shocks. And it's important that we mention this because this has also had a devastating effect on our education system. The first one was the Ebola crisis, where the school system was shut down for over 9 months. Economic activities had to stop and all of that sort of stuff. And as a result of that, we suffered from learning loss. At that point in time, learning loss was a new phenomenon. We actually made use of a radio teaching program to engage some of our kids in the education process, although not all of our kids were able to access that radio teaching program. What we noticed was that a number of the girl children became pregnant, and there were people who were lost to the system. So at the point at which the whole world was faced with COVID, we have had a pretty good lesson in how to handle a crisis such as that.
Right.
And so we had a smoother transition during the time of COVID than most other countries. So we had to shut down schools for a short period of time. We were able to dust down our radio teaching program, and so we were able to engage with the learners remotely. And we have maintained those assets as we go forward. But having said that, as I said, this government in 2018 introduced the Free Quality School Education, and it has introduced 1 million learners. But having said that, it comes with its own challenges.
Right.
With 1 million learners, you need to build infrastructure. If I take, for example, our current education budget, about 98% of that budget is recurrent expenditure. It goes towards the payment of salaries, which leaves me with 2% for capital development. And so we are heavily reliant upon donors and organizations, NGOs like Schools for Salone, to help us meet this infrastructure gap. We have done quite well. We've built quite a lot of schools across the country. Over the last couple of months, for example, I commissioned over 27 And previously, I had about 56 pre-primary school education.
Mhm.
And so we are making inroads, and we are addressing some of the challenges that we inherited. But at the same time, we still have some challenges in the system.
Thank you so
Over.
much. Thank you so much. Bidemi, first of all, I can say something on a generation, na the last generation of great education. That's what me can look and say, una time na all teen loss. But tell me again, for my generation, since I'm so young, um but for the reason why I'm making this emphasis is that the majority of the population in Sierra Leone is under 40, right? So we really are we're the children of the war, right? Children who were kids during the war, or children born during the war or after. And so it'd be really, I mean, I'd be like for you to talk a little bit about what was learning like when you were in school. I know that you went to the Annie Walsh, the school. What was that? What was it like back then? And how does it compare to what the Learning Foundation is finding in classrooms in Sierra Leone today?
Thanks, Vickie. Thanks for making me feel really ancient. But I think Minister Sackey has done sort of a really good job of kind of giving the overall big picture about the state of education. And I think I will say that every generation feels like the education system is getting worse, right? So I think my parents felt when I was going to school that the quality of education probably wasn't as good as when they were there. Um, and also, I also want to say, I mean, obviously the experience of that I had in the schools that I went to in Freetown, Annie Walsh, one of the best schools in the country. I went to a government assisted public school, primary school, St. Anne's. Um, and I think one thing that's different in terms of my experience and the experience now in a lot of these schools, one is the availability of trained teachers, availability of teaching and learning material for a lot of these schools in the faraway places that Schools for Salone works. One of the things that we face is that many of the teachers are um, don't have the necessary qualifications. Many of them are volunteer teachers, so they are not yet on the government payroll, and many before Schools for Salone comes in and brings in the resources that they do, many of them um, lack sort of basic teaching and learning materials. So I think that disparity probably has always been around in terms of the resources that are available in the cities and those that are available in definitely more remote areas. And that's one of the things that Schools for Salone is looking to change.
Okay, so you founded the Learning Foundation, I believe, with you have a co-founder. You're a co-founder. I think Inde is the other person that
We actually have, and also Sidi Koroma, was
Oh
also
my
one of the
God. I
original
love CD
founders.
also.
Yeah.
Love CD. Yeah, okay. Now I get it. I see.
Mhm.
Because yes.
Mhm.
Tell me a little bit about the need that the Learning Foundation is trying to respond to. Like, what did the three of you together as educators? What did you feel in the air? What did you see in the data? What made you realize that like you needed to take action and start this organization?
Yeah, so I went back to Sierra Leone back in 2007, and Inde and Sidi probably came around the same time, maybe a little earlier than I did. And Inde and I both work in the education sector space. She ran a school. I was more on the policy side, working with the World Bank and IRC and supporting the ministry. And CD worked, she's a HR professional, so she works more with sort of adults and people who are transitioning into the workforce. And one of the things that I think what brought us all together was this realization that a lot of young people are going through school but not acquiring the necessary skills that they need to succeed, whether it's in their lives, in further education, or in the work area. And a common thread that we saw that we wanted to tackle was the lack of sort of critical literacy, critical, thinking skills. And from the research, we all know that um, it is really important that at the early stage, young people develop literacy, very strong literacy skills, because that is what helps them um, sort of learn more and learn better as they're growing up and become sort of lifelong learners, even as they're transitioning to the workplace. So that is really where, as the Learning Foundation, just in the name, we're very conscious about that we wanted to focus on learning, and that we wanted especially to focus on literacy, because we think by creating young people who are readers, who enjoy reading and who seek out books and seek out learning, then that is the way in which you really develop sort of an educated society. So we have always been focused on literacy. We started off with one school in the Western area, Services School. We helped them build a library where we provided books. And since we've also been sort of training teacher librarians, and training teachers on literacy instruction, how to teach young kids or young people how to read. And that really has been the focus. At about the same time, the government had released sort of a white paper that focused on why kids were doing so badly in these national examinations. And they were also seeing the same things, that one of the critical factors was the lack of basic sort of literacy and reading skills. So they struggled to even like read and interpret these questions, and that shows up all the way at the WASC level. So you really, I mean, the research shows, we all know, you have to tackle the area of literacy and sort of foundational learning skills, which is why it's great to see, the ministry right now putting so much of an emphasis on foundational literacy skills, because I think that's where that's where it all starts. And you have to get the teachers on board. I have to say some of our teachers themselves struggle with literacy and reading and language. So and it's because, they didn't get it from the beginning. And so part of what we're really doing is to bring what we know from the research, from educational practices in other countries, into the work that we do with the Learning Foundation.
Thank you. Mrs. Sackey, like Bidemi just stated, government, there is a policy shift, right? Like there's a realization or an acceptance at the highest level that something isn't working, right? Because if you get to 10 years of age in Sierra Leone and you're not and a large percentage, I think it's like 95% at the last UNICEF report that I read, 95% are not reading up to their level. That's a problem, because but if you not don't sabi read by 10, who say you go land? So by the end of your primary school education, now you go able pass the school, what's not the exam set for we not been getting we own time. What's not the word?
Was
Okay.
Was
was
Class 6. Class 6
oh
by
NPSC
NPSC.
NPSC. If you don't have those basic reading skills, how you did pass how you did take the NPSC exam, right? And so tell me a little bit about the policy shift now in education and this focus on foundational learning, and what are you doing, or what is the government trying to do, at least to support teachers to get them in a place where they can improve learning outcomes at the foundational level?
Well, let me start off with what happened in 2021. 2021, we had a national baseline assessment using EGMA-EGRA, which is early grade reading and early grade mathematics assessment, which pointed to the fact that a significant number of our young people were experiencing learning poverty. This is at age 10. They can read, perhaps, but can't understand fully what they've read. And so at that particular point in time, we took the view as a government that we had to take the hit on the chin and do the needful. And so what we decided to do was to make a commitment, and the president made a commitment that by 2030, we will have the rates of learning poverty. And as a result of that, we started to work on a partnership compact, which is an application which we made to the Global Partnership for Education. We were successful in attracting about $50 million from GPE and other donors. And we have now embarked upon the rollout of our foundational learning. But let me just take a slight detour. I want to just qualify what we see as foundational learning.
Okay.
For most other countries, it's literacy, numeracy, and socio-emotional skills. In Sierra Leone, we took the view, with our experience and history, that we wanted to add two other elements to it. The one is civic education. That's going back to our history of the Civil War, and we wanted to teach our kids right at the early stages of the whole thing about tolerance and how their relationship with their families, their towns, the nation, and even with the environment, taking into consideration that we've had a mudslide incident in Sierra Leone, which killed a significant number of people. We also decided that because of the long history of shocks that we've had, we wanted to introduce digital skills to ensure that our young people can leapfrog their way to the 21st century and address the learning losses that they may have experienced as a result of these shocks. So I am proud to say that when we talk about foundational learning, Sierra Leone stands on its own with having these 5 elements.
I hear you. I hear
Yes.
you. But inside Neo Aid, as you did talk, and they say, hey, minister, minister, this is nice. Minister is very good. It sounds good. I like it. The packaging is correct. I like the brand. Personally, I share these views, right? But if we're coming from a place where we're acknowledging that not most, but so many of these teachers don't have the skills they need, the teaching skills that they need to be able to get children into not to the Salone version or this we all I will call it fourth industrial revolution version of basic of foundational learning. That 4IR version where you don't propose. If so many teachers lack the basics themselves to be able to pass on those foundational skills as we previously defined it, is this not overly ambitious? And does it not then put the cart before the horse? I'm only asking because I think that as citizens, we're so used to hearing these like really fantastic plans and ideas, but on the ground, you're coming from Teaching Service Commission, you know, I don't even have to tell you. You can't tell. You're the one that can tell me how, even with $50 million committed, right? How can we actually get to that version if realistically we are where we are, right? How are we going to make this work?
Well, thank you very much, Vickie, for asking the question, because it gives me an opportunity to tell the world what we are doing. As you rightly say, I'm from the Teaching Service Commission, and one of the things I introduced whilst I was at the Teaching Service Commission is the fact that we introduced licensure for our teachers. And that was because we thought that some of the teachers that were graduating from our teacher training schools were not teach ready. They were not ready to be able to impart the knowledge in the way we wanted them to do. So we've introduced an exam, and the teachers have to take 5 subjects. One is English, because that's the medium of communication. The second is mathematics. A primary school teacher will teach both English and maths, but also maths also helps you with computational thinking, problem solving skills. The third is ICT. Again, I talked about digital skills in foundational learning, and so these teachers need to be equipped with digital skills. The second is pedagogy, that is how to teach.
Right.
And the fifth is professional standards, our expectations, the code of conduct for teachers, because we should have expectations for a professional. And these are things that we have introduced alongside um, um, the teaching of foundational learning. Let me also just say to you that we have spent the last couple of months developing teaching and learning materials and teacher guides, learning lesson plans, and all of that, using structured pedagogy. So, in other words, all of these various elements are aligned, and we are using the science of reading, so it's sequential. So, it's a different strategy from what we've used in the past. So, if you think about it, in 2018, our government has introduced 4 different curricula. One is early years or early childhood development curriculum. The second is basic education. The third is civic education, and the fourth, which I have just forgot, the senior secondary school education curriculum. So let's go back to the basic education curriculum. We are saying that we did not always get it right. That was very broad based, and it did not specifically equipped our teachers to teach the science of reading. So we have now introduced a new approach, taking into consideration that this is tried and tested, and it's a different approach. But let me just add, in addition to using structured pedagogy, we've added remediation. Let's call it catch-up. That's what the Zambians call it. So not all of our kids would learn at the same rate, at the same level. Others have used teaching at the right level. But in other words, let's go back to our days when I went to school. When you were doing reading, our teachers used what was called setting. So you have group A, group B, group C. Group A would be the fast readers, group B would be the average, and then group C would be those who are struggling. And you can move from one group to the other. So let's see teaching at the right level as using that type of methodology. And I would say to you that just last month, we trained 14,000 teachers in both literacy and numeracy across the country. So all teachers at P1, which is class 1, have been trained in addition to their head teachers who will be supervising them, who will be the instructional leaders in their schools. And we are also training our school quality assurance officers. These are the inspectors of old, to actually be able to coach these people whilst they are in the classroom.
Okay. So it's coming. It's on the way.
So you see, it's not a far-fetched. It's not an ambitious plan.
No, I'm not saying, because it's so. How can I put this, Minister? Other people than they, if now we know what we did to we say we're able to talk this talk, but since the world is watching, I go just left and so and say that no, I do believe that we are on the right track. And I think that even just having this conversation, first of all, is like, it just shows that there's a willingness and there's a renewed focus, right, in doing things the right way. So yes, we both at Schools for Salone and all our partners, we recognize that the ministry is moving in the right direction. I'm not going to say the new direction, the right direction. Bidemi, tell me a little bit about what the Learning Foundation is seeing in classrooms with the teachers. When you take on a new school and you go to Schools for Salone supported school, and you do that pre-assessment, right? what are you finding at the classroom level? What are teachers struggling with? What are the realities on the ground? We know that help is on the way and we are waiting for it. And when it comes, we shall embrace it. But now on the ground, what is the situation and why is it so important for us to continue to focus on foundational skills and teaching skills for our teachers?
Yeah, I mean, thanks. And yeah, I agree with, Minister Saki. There's a lot that's happening at the government level. But I think the realities on the ground, it lags behind quite a bit. One of the things that we find, and especially with the schools that we work with Schools for Salone, that, as I said, are really sort of these remote schools in marginalized areas, or as Vickie said, the last mile schools. Um, we struggle a lot with the teachers at these schools. As I mentioned before, many of them are volunteer teachers who Schools for Salone is working to get them through the certification or the teacher training process. But a lot of the teachers, especially those who are in the foundational level, and we're trying to work with the principals to say, you really should have your best teachers teaching the really young kids. Those are the really critical years. But that's not the case. So we have teachers who struggle themselves with phonics, with letter sounds, with reading, basically. We have teachers who are volunteers, and so they move in and out of the school. They're not being paid. So one year we'll like train a set of teachers who are there teaching. By the next year, about half of them are gone. A new set of volunteers have come in. And so, we have a process that sort of works in levels. So we take the teachers from level 1 to level 2 to level 3. But if a teacher isn't there for 2, 3 years, they all, you get level 1 and then you sort of leave. So those are kind of the challenges. And we know the training for the grade 1 teachers happened that the ministry did a few months ago. But many of our teachers, because they're not really sort of recognized, they're volunteer teachers. They're not the ones that go to the training, but they're the ones that are teaching the class. So that's another thing that we need to be, as we're doing all these trainings, in order to make sure that it's having the impact that we want. There's a lot around school management, teacher management, etc. And Minister Sackey, I'm sure, knows that that also needs to happen. And I would say, as we're providing resources, and many of them still don't have the resources, let's look at maybe starting with the schools that are far away and further away from the city centers, um, and then make our way into the city centers, because they have been sort of neglected for quite a while. Let's think a bit about, teacher resourcing with the Teaching Service Commission. I know teacher management is a big part of the mandate. And that I was there in the beginning. I was with the World Bank when we were setting that up many years ago, and it's come a long way, especially with the policies and all of that kind of stuff. But in terms of actually the schools feeling the impact of that's still a ways to come. And that's why, we're there, and I'm really appreciative that Minister Saki and others are open to other service providers, NGOs, civil society like ourselves, working with the ministries in these sort of faraway schools. So encouraging local NGOs, providing them with the materials and the resources, so they understand, and pulling them in so they understand what the ministry is trying to do. And then we can then sort of bring that into the schools, and support the teachers with the same materials and everything until the ministry gets there. But yeah, I mean, those are some of the challenges that we're facing. I'm sure it's not new to the minister.
Yeah, no, as you were speaking, I was just thinking about a recent UNICEF report that I read for 2021, just about the disparity between school completion rates in urban areas and rural areas. Like with the poorest poor, I think it's just like 5% have a chance of actually completing secondary school, right? And then there are these disparities for girls and for boys. So the further away we get to from the center, right, in a lot of these last mile community schools, it's just, you know, 80% will finish primary school. And then by the time you get to JSS, it's down to 40 something. By the time you get to XS, it's down to 20%, right? So it's that something is definitely going on along the way. And I think some of you've already touched on some of the issues, like whether it's just, you know, if you don't have the right teachers there, children tend to fall out. Yes, we have lots of schools built, but then, you know, the distribution of schools between primary schools and JSS. And then if you school too far, if the JSS far from the SS, if people then get for waka fast, sometimes that distance they make, somebody they drop out of the system, right? So there's so many things along the way that if you're not in the urban centers, it makes it just so much difficult for you to continue your educational journey, which is why, of course, we can never have enough players in education trying to make sure we expand access, but also guarantee quality all the way at the last mile. I've seen some questions come in, and we only got 90 minutes for this call, and I'm just going to look through if you're open to take some questions really, really quickly. There's a question here from Deborah Coleman, and she wants to know, for the volunteer teachers, and this is a question we get asked at Schools for Salone all the time, right? If you go to a school and let's say 40% of the teachers at the community school, and I think the more remote the school is, the higher the percentage of volunteer teachers, right? These are the teachers without PIN codes, right? I'm sure the 14,000 people that were trained, these are the teachers who were PIN, correct? The ones that, this is everybody? Yeah. Okay, yes. Fantastic. So how do we help volunteer teachers if they don't have PIN codes? Because, and then sometimes you get the one way they don't already done the certification program. But I want to cover my face at the cities. Let nobody not say I talk bad. But some people do finish even after they finish the certification. There's there's bureaucracy that you don't done, but you still not get PIN code. So what can we do anything to support the volunteer teachers at these schools?
Well, first of all, let me just there are a couple of things I would like to share with the audience. Firstly, what we do tend to do in terms of our deployment, we try to deploy people in rural areas, very much in line with our radical inclusion policy. The problem we have is this. Now, you will attract teachers from Bo, where you have teacher training colleges, and then you send them to Pujong. And because once they get their PIN codes, they are attracted to the bright lights of Bo. And this is also the case in the north. So you attract them from Putloko, where you have a teacher training college. You send them to Cambia, they get their PIN codes, and they come back. So what we are now doing to address this issue is to make sure that we recruit from the volunteer teachers who are already based in these rural areas. Because what we have noticed is that type of transfer does not take place because they've made up their mind voluntarily to be in these areas. Okay. The second thing also that we are doing with our volunteer teachers is in the case of GP funding, we have recruited 1,000 of them.
I'm sorry. What is GP
in funding? In the case of the Global Partnership for Education funding. Okay. Sure. Thank you. We've been able to recruit them not on the payroll, but they still continue to be volunteer teachers, but having the same salaries as those on the payroll.
Okay. And this is already been deployed, or this is coming?
No, they're going through the process right now.
Okay, fantastic.
Yes. Great. So we are looking at new ways of making sure that those teachers will remain in the rural areas. Let me also just say this. The government of Sierra Leone has given us a mandate to recruit 2,000 additional teachers this year. And we have used a trigger from the Global Partnership for Education, which says that we deploy teachers where we know that there is a low learning outcome. Okay. So we are now using learning outcome as a trigger to recruit people to these areas. Mm-hmm. So we haven't got it absolutely right, and I'm not saying that it's perfect, but we are willing and flexible enough to make sure that we try new things in order to see what works.
Thank you. I have this is a long one, Bidemi, so I'll have you. I'll read it slowly. So, what assets do children bring to school, and how can teachers learn to help children build bridges from what they bring to the target goals and to overcome the barriers to learning? Sierra Leone has an incredibly rich local environment, natural, social, and cultural, that could provide the basis of learning material.
Yeah, I'm glad we have this question, and I'm sure Sayo can speak more about this as well. Yeah, I mean, we do, at least with the Learning Foundation, with all that we do in terms of teacher training, is make sure that we work with them to use what's in their environment. So all the stories, the oral stories that they have are a great way to teach listening comprehension, reading comprehension. We use a lot of books that have the government has worked with, writers, Sierra Leonean writers, to come up with a lot of reading materials
And
from
even
local
ones that they haven't worked with, Bidemi.
from
You
local
guys,
stories. And also, yes, Vicky, we know you've been writing children's books, so we're really going out there to source out materials that have been produced locally by teachers, and also encouraging during our training teachers to use the materials from the environment, for them to use stories from the environment, oral histories, encourage parents, because kids pick up their language skills from when they're very young, even from before they get to school. So the more we tell them stories, the more we get them to talk about what's going on in their environment, etc., etc. The more they're able to pick up these skills. And I know Richard and Catherine have been teaching, supporting teaching in Sierra Leone for many years, and are very familiar with the environment. So those are some of the ways in which we are, in which we are trying to do that.
thank you so much. And I think this will be the last question before we move on to the next section, which is, Mr. Minister, what has the free and quality education done for school kids with kids and people with special needs? I think this speaks to the radical inclusion policy, but I'll let you do it. I'll let you do it.
Well, I think you've got it right. It speaks to the radical inclusion policy. And in terms of kids in with special needs, I tend to say them into two. I categorize them into two categories. One, those who have visible disabilities. So in the case of visible disabilities, you have someone who is in a wheelchair. We have ramps in our schools so that they can access the building, and so on and so forth. You have those who are blind, who will then have braille that we introduce. And as I mentioned this, let me just say something and share a story with you. So last year, we were approached by a group of blind students who actually said that they had not been passing WAS for the last 3 years. And so we set up a technical team with WAEC, that's the West African Examination Council. We made sure that we put in place reasonable adjustments for them, and provided them with assistive technology. And I'm proud to say that this year, a significant amount of them passed the exams. So we know that where we provide facilities for them, where we make reasonable adjustments for them, we will get the results. So what I now want to do is to push this across the board. So the second and perhaps the most difficult category to address in the case of special needs are those I call the invisible disabled. So these would be those with autisms, those with dyslexia, and so you don't see that. But the good thing is, I was in a school in Gambia, and the Ministry of Health was doing a screening exercise. So we're starting to see a collaboration between education and health and social services to actually provide a service. And as a Sierra Leonean, I am saying this to you: we are we're breaking barriers in Africa. Yes, we haven't got to the European standards or the American standards, but we are the cutting edge. We are being innovative around this. So a radical inclusion policy is alive and kicking.
And it's,
Thank
you
you.
don't see why they smile. You don't see why they smile. You don't see why they smile for radical inclusion. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope the both of you will stick around for the rest of. We just have about a little over 30 minutes left, but it's been a pleasure having you. Thank you, Bidemi. You are always the guiding lights. Thank you so much for your leadership. And Mrs. Sackey, I'm so honored to get to meet you today. Hopefully, next time I'm in Sierra Leone, I will come fend you. I'll bring you copies of my books. And maybe we go fend with or include that inside the curriculum because we have to support the Sierra Leonean writers. You need the local content. Radical inclusion includes all of us. Include us, please.
It has been my pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Minister Sackey. Lovely to see you.
So now I'm going to take you guys to our most recent teacher training program in the Southern Province, where the Learning Foundation, one of the places that the Learning Foundation works. But first I have to, I have to do that. Yes, to just show you what it's like on the ground as a champion for education.
I am very excited this morning to welcome you to our training by the Learning Foundation Sierra Leone. And this is our level 2 training. You are on your exit training to go to level 3. It means this is going to be your final training at level 2. Very soon we'll get a new set of level 3 people, which are you. And I want to say congratulations in advance. I'm Sayomara, Program Manager for the Learning Foundation Sierra Leone. We are into literacy development. We work with teacher librarians to help so many leaders to become fluent leaders. We do so by training our teacher librarians on instructional practices that will be able to help readers who are struggling to be able to read. And also we work with teachers, especially teachers for schools for Sierra Leone schools, to be able to become efficient teachers in primary 1 to 3. That's the work we do. So essentially we do library development through training of our teacher librarians and also classroom management practices with our schools for Sierra Leone teachers. That's the work we do. Who can tell me what is this? As you see, what you do? See. V. What is this? V. V. Everybody say it? V. Again? V. Let's have an example sentence for class 1. So our training actually has got some reforms. So management had the view of our training model. So now our training has been chunked into 3 levels, which is level 1, level 2, and level 3, to make sure that they have a foundational start onto where we want them to reach at their certification level. We're covering Tonkolili, Koinadugu, and Bo. And at this point, we're working with 22 communities. We're hoping to expand depending to the funding support we have, because we only operate with what we have at the moment. We are training close to 70 teachers as I speak, overall for level 1, 2, and 3 combined.
We were in the school. Our head teachers sent us for this training. He first explained it to us that it is a lower level training. So when we come, we started the training. Since we have started this training has motivated me. All the activities, because the facilitators are very much grounded in the area of facilitating us. So we understand all the concept of it.
Math. What do you see here? Math.
What motivates me is that the training that we got from the Learning Foundation, the skills and knowledge that they impact in us, that gives me the motivation to be in the classroom. Whenever I use those skills, it helps me to create more things for the pupils in the class.
The impact is really enormous, and positively. First, it is influencing behavior change, that the teachers now, before they used to go to class, just what they've memorized or they've used to, that's what they teach. But now they know they're required to plan a lesson for every time they teach. And even when we go for monitoring, those are the things we look for to see your readiness in teaching. It's not like what I think, it's what I've prepared to teach the children. That is one thing we see. And the benefit of that is it increases student participation in class and help them to become functional learners. At the end of the day, the result is you would see better grades in their public or exit exams that they take at the end of their primary education.
Before this time, I was not able to even make a lesson note or lesson plan for myself. And even know about letter sound, I was not know about that one. Through by the facilitator and the support of TLF, I have now gained that one. I'm taking the knowledge to my case.
Although it's not easy to be a teacher, but I always try. Because there is no stipend for us with the community teachers. We are not under payroll. So with the help of this training, so I managed to teach the kids for let the idea don't go astray.
We deeply appreciate the teachers who have made themselves available to teach even though they don't have stipends or salary from government, but they've stayed there. So one of the ways we do appreciate them is to applaud their effort and see that in our trainings at the end of the year, we recognize those efforts by giving them either incentives or other rewards that will really continue to increase their motivation, because it shows and tells us that not everyone is going to the classroom just for fun, but they want to build it as a professional career in their lives.
The birds can fly. The birds can fly.
Certain times, most of our colleagues are not in that mode to teach us how we are. We want to tell the donors to add more teachers on the training so that they can be able to impart the knowledge as how we are for today.
In my own school, I have about 120 pupils in my class. I'm the only teacher with them. So I find it difficult to gather those children for them to be in the same place.
I recommend to the Learning Foundation that this training is not enough for us. Let them establish the training instead of yearly, let it be timely.
We're seeing high number of students in class, but however, in terms of teachers having the skills to manage that is really a challenge. So each time we're doing our training, we incorporate the aspect of practicing and coaching them on how to deal with large groups by working with small groups, put them into subgroups, and do activity-based training for them to be able to apply it in class, because that's one of the ways we deal with those challenges. And however, we're looking at ways wherein, because some of the schools that have overcrowding in class do have other teachers that are volunteering to teach, but we are only asking one teacher per class to come for now. So we're looking at possibilities wherein we, based on funding, to see how we can increase the number or give opportunities to other schools who do not have it. The aspect of limited resources, we always train them on in a way that they can improvise in class, because no matter what, not every school, especially public schools, do have every resource needed to be able to teach. So the aspect of improvisation help them to be able to become functional teachers in class. And also we look for funding and also try to make sure that those basic resources they need, like prints and reading text and sometimes vanguards or pen or pencils that they would use, those basic things we try as much as possible during our training to make sure that they have some of it so that they can use it to be able to teach the children. That's how we address it. In terms of not being paid by government, that's a huge challenge that we cannot address because we have a small amount of budget that we operate in. But however, recently we have introduced the aspect of reward system where we, at the end of the school year, we put all of the teachers we worked with together to reward them by giving them incentives or like phones like smartphones or other cash award, t-shirts or other materials or learning materials they would use in class by way of appreciating their efforts. So in that way, we try to incentivize the program. We want to commend Macpherson Foundation and Schools for Sierra Leone for giving us support up to this time and making sure that we have funds to operate. But however, the challenges we're having has to do with the demand of teachers in the community, because recently we have head teachers meeting wherein the head teachers are asking that we're asking to bring class 1, 2, and 3 teachers to a training, but they want the number to increase in school, at least to have 4 or 5 teachers in one school to come for a training. Our budget cannot contain that at the moment. So the more funds we have, we'll be able to expand the number and also enroll new schools, because there are a lot of schools that Schools for Sierra Leone has built, but not all of the schools that they've built that we're currently working with. There's still a lot more waiting out there to join our training.
Thank you, Sayo, for the amazing work that you're doing and championing with the Learning Foundation. So, as I said at the start of the program, today is Giving Tuesday. It is the Global Day of Giving. And we're hosting this webinar to specifically raise funds to expand the work that the Learning Foundation is already doing in Sierra Leone. Like you just heard from Sayo, the demand far exceeds what we can do at this moment. Schools for Salone has 45 schools, but we don't even have the resources to be able to expand this kind of support to all the schools that we work in. And of course, even beyond our schools, the need is great. The further you get away from the center, meaning from urban centers, the harder it is to find qualified teachers, trained teachers. In some schools that we work at in Golanwu and in Buma, we've been there, we've seen that maybe sometimes it's just the head teacher that's a PIN teacher. Everybody else is a volunteer. Some of these people have been volunteering for years. They've never really been on the government payroll. They've never really had teacher training support. So this work that the Learning Foundation is doing is critical. It's critical. If we're trying to move away from access towards quality, it starts with the teachers. Teachers need to be trained, teachers need to be equipped, and they need the resources. Again, the government has its heart and mind and policies in the right place. And it's a really exciting time for education in Sierra Leone. But there's always a gap. There's always more need, because Sierra Leone is trying to recover from 2 decades of low infrastructure, displaced teachers, untrained teachers. It's going to take a really long time for us to get there. But we can expedite that process if we can mobilize enough resources to support organizations like Schools for Salone, which supports the Learning Foundation. So next, I would like to welcome Allison Sinning, who is our program officer at Schools for Salone, and Sayo, who is the program manager for the Learning Foundation. And we're going to talk about the work that Learning Foundation does in Sierra Leone. I'm also going to talk to Allison a little bit about, Allison is a former Peace Corps volunteer. Allison's a former Peace Corps volunteer. And the reason why I smile is just because, you know, at the top of the program, I said that our Schools for Salone is powered by and supported by, you know, basically peace, you know, it's a Peace Corps love. Like the entire organization is like a heart-based organization about friendship and generosity and service. And when you joined Schools for Salone, we were all like, yep, right person, done the Peace Corps in Sierra Leone, that's our girl. So thank you so much. And of course, Sayo, you are an amazing education leader in Sierra Leone, really committed to doing this work and supporting teachers. So thank you so much for your service. Allison, I'd like to start with you. You went to do your Peace Corps, I believe, 2011, 2012 in Sierra Leone. Tell me about your experience teaching in Sierra Leone with the Peace Corps, like what you found in the classroom compared to now as a program officer for Schools for Salone, kind of getting more of a higher level, maybe national view compared to what it was in the classroom.
Mm-hmm. So I was in Sierra Leone as a Peace Corps volunteer in 2010, 2012. I taught at the secondary school level. So I taught English and literature for mainly senior, so a senior secondary. And I think, my experience was really interesting because I was at an all-girls boarding school in Moyamba district. And I found that teaching, English and literature at that level, I was walking and expecting, I was, expected to teach these, large books. I think I had to teach Lord of the Flies one semester. Yeah. And some other literature. And I found that my girls really struggled to, read the text and to be able to comprehend and real to analyze the text. So, when I was in the classroom, we really kind of, went back and had to kind of go back to the basics on, basic writing skills. We did some, other reading exercises at that time. And I know that it has gotten better, since then, and since 2010, because this was almost over a decade ago now. So, we heard a lot about, from the minister on the ministry's priorities and, the work that they're doing to kind of, build foundational literacy skills. And so I think it will take time to get to that secondary school level. But I think, the country is really on the right track of, where they're going with in education. So it's been really interesting. I've only been in the organization for about 10 months now. And so it's been fun to work more with the primary school students and work with our partners who are working on the ground, with those younger kids, because I mainly worked at that secondary school level. So, it's work like the Learning Foundation and that SIO, and also with one of our other partners who provides library books in the classrooms, the Sierra Leone Book Trust, to make sure that our kids have learning materials and access to books. So it's been a really interesting ride so far. And I think, focusing on, building these skills within our teachers and helping our kids learn these foundational literacy skills is just absolutely critical and key. So
across the schools that Schools for Salone supports, which I think is about 45, what would you say is the breakdown of ratio of trained and PIN-coded teachers to teachers who are untrained or without PIN code?
So within our schools, we have 70% of our teachers do not have a PIN code, and then 30% have a PIN code. And so, there's a difference between those that are trained and those that are paid. So I'd have to do more little digging into our data on finding out exactly who had, what qualifications they have and what the breakdowns are. But about 70% are volunteer teachers or unpaid teachers.
And do you think this is because most of the schools that you support, or most of the places where you've built, are in more remote areas? Do you find that the disparities, the urban-rural disparity, or is it something else?
I would agree with that. Yeah, I believe, because we are working in, like you said, those en-road communities, those tend to have a lot higher unpaid teachers. I would also say, we have a lot of primary schools. And so, now there is this renewed, vision to support foundational learning. But I think in the past, it was teachers really wanted to teach at that secondary school level. So I think that also drives that a little bit as well. So.
Sayo, I know that you've been doing this work for several years now, and there is this renewed focus at the national level on foundational skills and teacher training. But from your experience, where are teachers really struggling? What are the biggest challenges for them when it comes to teaching? Sorry, you're on mute. You have to unmute yourself. There you go.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. So I feel lucky and humbled to be part of this conversation. But frankly, actually, this is a job I love to do. It makes me happy being around students and teachers. So I'm glad to be here. One of the things I'm seeing right now, as I'm currently in the field doing monitoring, we're doing a lot of things in terms of training to train the teachers to go back to the classrooms and teach. But the challenges we have is to how to get them to stay in those schools. Sometimes you might train one teacher for a particular class, like class 1, and when you go there, because they've seen that that teacher is more empowered, they would send that person to the higher class, and then we have a whole start again to have a new teacher to train. And the other aspect which I'm a little bit worried about has to do with Schools for Sierra Leone is doing an amazing job in Sierra Leone to build schools, put the resources and the teachers there, and also go to the extent of doing their certification. But at the end of the day, when they come, they would sit like 2-3 years without PIN code, and then they are tired and they go. And I don't blame them because they have to find a living to sustain their families. So that's a serious challenge for our program as the Learning Foundation, because we want to have continuous professional development for our teachers. But how can we do it if we continue to have high turnover of teachers in the classroom because of the non-existence of government support in terms of getting stipends or salary? So that's one of the discovery we found. So I've been to about 10 schools right now, and I realized that even some schools
can you
which are
tell
not,
us what region, the schools that you're visiting right now that you're in the field, what region they're in Sierra Leone? What communities?
yes, so yeah, we're covering the north and the south right now. So like in Koinadugu, we went to Musaya, we went to Kadanso and Seyadugu, and down to Tonkulili, we went to Masanga, we went to Mafroka, Wubis, yeah, and now we're in Bo.
Okay.
So, yeah, when you go to the classroom, you realize that, yes, the teachers really want to go to teach, but they don't have the motivation to do so. And one of the problems I've discovered is that some of the schools do not even have the resources they need to teach the children. For example, when I was doing monitoring, I met with one of the district education officer that's covering education for that district. Like, they expect every school to have the teaching syllabi that they use to make sure they track completion rate. Bulk of the schools I've gone to don't have it, and some that have it do not even have the skills to be able to do it, to use it to teach. So there's a wide gap of not having the content knowledge and that of also the teaching knowledge. So this is making it more complex and challenging. That I think for me, it's a think time for even for Schools for Salone to see, with the amount of investment being done to train teachers, and they come back 1 year, 2 years along the line, they leave and go to the mines because they have to earn a living to sustain their families. To begin to think about ways and say, wait a moment, I think it is time for us to see how maybe we can think of ways of getting incentives and also come up with a kind of like an MOU with government of Sierra Leone through the Ministry of Education that, okay, what if we have like a kind of support for teachers with stipend for, like, let's say as a pilot for 18 months. 1 year, 6 months, we want to support teachers with stipend, and then we want to see how government can at least help us recruit 30% of the teachers we've trained. And see, because it seems like they have been trained with the intention for them to stay in school, but how can they continue to stay without pay? That's really challenging.
No, that's
yeah.
You said it all. You said it all. We went to
I think it's a time to reflect about that and see how we all can work together. And one of the things I would like to suggest has to do with the teaching and learning materials. Like from the head teachers down to their deputies, majority of them don't even know how to even use the teaching syllabus to track progress made in school. And each time we go to school to monitor, government wants us to use the curriculum they've set to teach in line with those weeks. We're using it to do our model lessons in class, but the teachers are not able to do it because they don't have the skills yet to be able to do it. And that means we need to do a kind of, I would use government language, radical inclusion, to see that we have to bring the resources and train them to be able to do it in their schools.
Right. Thank you so much. I hate for my live streams to go over time. But thank you so much, Sayo. I think that you really understand what the issues are. This is what you're facing. This is what you see regularly. Today, so to not keep you guys any longer, I know that there are lots and lots of questions. I think that Allison is making note of all the questions, and if we can't get to them, we will definitely try to. For those of you who are subscribed to our newsletter, you will get this video. And also, if you're not subscribed to our newsletter, please go to our website, schoolsforsalone.org, so that you can get subscribed, and maybe some of these questions will be answered at a later date. Today's conversation is to help us mobilize resources to support the Learning Foundation in Sierra Leone, specifically the work to train our teachers. Now, Sierra Leone is on the right path. We, at the national level, the government has a renewed focus, not just on education, but specifically on foundational learning and I guess like early, some people like early child development, etc. Government is taking this holistic approach, but there is still a big gap between what we want to do and what needs to happen in the situation on the ground. So this Giving Tuesday, which is today, we're inviting you to join us, Schools for Salone, and our partners, the Learning Foundation, to make a world of difference. If you head over to our website, you can support our campaign to raise funds for the Learning Foundation, to teach children to read, to train teachers, and to improve the quality of education in Sierra Leone. Our goal for this Giving Tuesday is to raise $20,000 for the Learning Foundation's work in Sierra Leone. So if you've been moved by today's conversation and you understand the critical need to train teachers and equip them with the skills they need to support students in Sierra Leone and to basically set them up for a brighter future, this is your chance to join us. So please head over to, it's scrolling on my screen and it's pinned in the comments, schoolsforsalone.org, or you can click on rb.gy/OG7. It's going across the screen. 100% of 100% of the funds raised here today will go to the Learning Foundation. What does that mean? It means that the funds that you donate are not going to fly any expats to Sierra Leone to go do the work and deliver on our mission. 100% of today's Giving Tuesday donation goes to the Learning Foundation to help expand access to quality education, to support the work that SIO is doing on the ground, to support teacher training, basically make sure that when teachers get to the classroom in Sierra Leone, they have the necessary skills to teach children to improve their learning outcomes. Thank you so much for joining us. I want to thank all of our guests today. Mr. Sackey, Conrad Sackey, the Minister of Basic and Senior Secondary Education, Cindy Novziger, Executive Director and founder of Schools for Salone, Allison Sinning, our program officer, Sayomara, program manager at the Learning Foundation, and of course, my big sister, Dr. Bidemi Carrol, who is the co-founder of the Learning Foundation. Thank you so much for joining us. I look forward to connecting with you online very soon. Una tata.